Connolly, Clodagh.
Just, Minister, it's a very clear question. What is the status of the review of Caranua? Has it been completed? When is it to be published? When will it be discussed before the House? You know that there's a background to this, and that in this Dáil we debated having a full review, a review that was promised from the beginning. And you know the upset amongst the applicants to Caranua out there. So I won't dwell on it at this point, but I'll certainly come back to it, Minister, following your answer.
The review that is currently underway is confined to the issue of eligibility to apply to the organisation for support. The terms of reference of the review of eligibility, a draft of which was published on my department's website earlier this year, provided for an initial phase involving review of Caranua's expenditure to date and an estimation of the projected expenditure, taking into account applications on hand and anticipated further applications, together with an estimation of any possible underspend of the available funding. This initial phase of the review is now at an advanced stage, and I hope to receive a report on it shortly. If the findings of this initial phase indicate that an underspend of the 110 million in funding available to Caranua is likely, a consultation process would then be initiated with stakeholders about an expansion of the eligibility criteria, including identification of the groups that could be considered for inclusion in any expansion, and would seek to identify possible arrangements for verifying eligibility, resource implications and related issues. If the findings indicate that an underspend was unlikely, the review will conclude at that point. It should be noted also that any proposal to widen eligibility would require legislation. It is worth noting that to date Caranua has received 6,000 applications and expended some 66 million in the support of over 4,000 applications. The Deputy will recall the debate in this House in May on private members' motion in her name and that of others relating to Caranua's operations. The amended motion accepted by the House called on the Government to take a number of specific actions in relation to Caranua. In response, Caranua has advised that it is reviewing its customer charter in consultation with stakeholders with a view to making data available on whether targets for response to phone calls and correspondence are being met. Data on feedback and complaints received is also being made available. Caranua is also working to increase the level of face-to-face engagement with applicants. It is doing this through scheduled face-to-face meetings in various venues in Dublin and in the regions. It should also be noted that the recent move by Caranua to a new office accommodation will facilitate a greater level of face-to-face engagement with applicants than had previously been possible. Finally, I understand that Caranua is working to enhance the level of statistics it provides to my department and to the public on waiting times for processing and communicating decisions.
That's the same reply that I got over a month ago. And at that stage, in a written reply, you told me the report was nearing completion. Over a month later, you're telling me the same thing. Now, I have to say to you, Minister, I don't wish to argue with you at all, but you have to place this question and answer in the context of people who are extremely upset. My office, as I'm sure other TDs' offices, are in constant receipt of urgent representation from applicants, one of whom rang our office today to confirm that they are on hunger strike, along with a number of other people. Such is their dissatisfaction with the service. The reason that I used my private members' time was to indicate to the Dáil the level of dissatisfaction, the lack of monitoring by your Department of Education over it, a list of contracts that had never been sanctioned. It looks like they were sanctioned retrospectively, and many other issues that we raised in the Dáil, and we appealed to you to carry out a full review. Not alone did you not do that, but the limited review that you're carrying out still has not been completed. Is it going to, can I have a date, and when will it be published, and when can we discuss it?
Minister.
Well, when they've completed the work, I mean, they will report to me. This is the latest that I have. I hope to receive it shortly, so I presume that represents very considerable progress on the work. But I think what I'm also pointing out that, since our debate earlier, there have been significant efforts and work by Caranua with my department to ensure that the procedures in relation to customer service support are improved, and the very issues that were raised here about delays, about face-to-face time, about the ways in which issues were being handled, those were issues of particular concern. The department and Caranua have been taking steps to address those, and I hope that people are seeing some improvement as a result of that. Obviously, there is an appeal process. We we will monitor the level of appeals, monitor the level of complaints that occur in an attempt to make sure that the changes that are being made are actually being reflected in better performance in relation to those very sensitive areas. So I hope there is improvement that is being reflected in the efforts that are going in the experience of those dealing with Caranua.
Very briefly, Deputy Connolly, because I want to get...
I appreciate that you're referring to changes that have been brought in, but I don't know if you appreciate the seriousness of what I've just said in relation to the representations that my office is getting, and I'm not alone in relation to somebody who has gone on hunger strike. I'm only repeating what he's told my office and a number of other people, and indeed for the second time we've passed that correspondence on to the Taoiseach's office today. Secondly, I understand that Caranua is functioning without a CEO. I have separately asked the Minister, is that correct? And I've also tabled a Dáil question. Perhaps you could confirm today, if you're referring to these changes, who is in charge pushing these changes? Is there a CEO in place? Now, I do not wish to stray into the employment law or anything like that, but it is a matter of public concern whether there is a CEO in place, and if not, is somebody else in place steering these changes? And can I have a precise date for the publication of the limited report?
Minister,
well,
very quickly, I want to take a deputy short halt.
But I think to be fair to anyone who is employed and who is under a contract and is entitled, if they are sick, to be on sick leave, I think it is unfair to be presenting, in the way in which you are. Of course, during periods of leave, the organisation is being properly managed, and it has a proper board who is very attentive to its role. But it's not holding up the work that is going on. And I absolutely understand the sensitivity of the work that's involved. These are people who have suffered hugely at the hands of institutions and of the state, and we have to deal with them very fairly. At the same time, I also realise the constraints on a board like Caranua, who have to comply with what has been decided by the legislature and the framework within which they must administer their decisions, and that has been a source of friction. But hopefully these new changes will help to ease those tensions.